What's up, everyone? Nick and Shane here to talk about Halo, the TV series premiering on Paramount Plus. We haven't done a review in a couple weeks now, but we decided it would be a good time to talk about the mid-season point. We're 4 episodes in of the 9-episode season. Figure why not just get it out of the way now instead of waiting one more week. So that being said, Shane, how are you doing? How have you been?
I'm good. I've caught up on Halo, so excited to talk about it. It's an interesting little show. We'll dive into our likes and dislikes, but uh, I'm still watching, so that means something, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And in lieu of creating a Paramount Plus account, it's also given me the ability to watch other shows that I have not
Yeah,
watched,
yeah.
which is nice.
Yeah, Star Trek's on there, and yeah.
I've been watching The Mayor of Kingstown, which I heard
Okay.
great things about, and I'm really digging that show. Jeremy Renner uh is it's different to see than him obviously portraying Hawkeye from the Marvel stuff, but he's doing a great job in it. Really interested to see where that show goes. And then I need to watch 1883. Also heard a lot of
Yep.
great things about
Yep.
that
I've heard
show.
great things about that one.
And Yellowstone. I have not watched Yellowstone at
I
all. I'm
haven't
so far
either.
behind.
There's so much stuff to watch
I
nowadays.
know
It feels like
there's too much, and that's why
just
I'm
spin the
just like,
wheel and pick one, and you'll find
yeah,
something.
essentially that's what it boils down to. It's like, which one am I going to talk about this week? Okay, this one.
We
But
need to
yeah,
talk about
so
Severance. That's one we need to get on.
yeah, that is a show I'm also behind on, unfortunately, but it is on my list of things. Same thing with Tokyo Vice on HBO.
There's just so much. Like, I could name
Yeah,
20 shows that I'm behind on.
I don't know if my buddy will watch this episode, but he always tells me to watch Fargo. I never watched Fargo at all,
Haven't watched it either. We're
and
terrible.
yeah, we're awful.
Viewers, we're terrible.
We're
But
awful
we're
critics.
talking about Halo. So
Yeah, exactly. We're here to talk about Halo. So, um, one of the interesting things we could, divulge on the overall story are the two different storylines we have going, right? We've got the one they're trying to follow and kind of also create their own path with, and then this entirely new plot line with Soren 66, or Spartan 66 rather, Soren the pirate and Quan. And that is the one that we both can agree is a pile of scrap metal rubbish.
it's weaker. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is not very good at all.
yeah, I kind of expected going like after the first episode that this would kind of be like maybe like a Last of Us type thing where it's like, John and Quan, they rhyme. John and Quan.
The John and Quan Show, starring
John and Quan.
Ace, the final frontier.
But yes. So I thought that's where they were going with it, but it seems like they're kind of like splitting off the storylines into two, and it creates this situation where one storyline is pretty interesting and the other is not really. And
Yeah,
that it happens in a lot of shows, it happens in a lot of movies where things are uneven, where you're interested in one plot instead of the other, and I think it's a problem. Every time that subplot comes on screen, I just kind of tune out, and then it's like, oh no, back to the Master Chief, please. And
yeah,
I would expect most people are the same way. I mean, I applaud them for trying to do their own thing, like create a new character, try and make you care about them, but it's not really working yet. That's not to say that it couldn't happen. Uh, it very well could round into a more interesting plot line, but right now, not really.
yeah. It's I think by this point through 4 episodes, because I don't really know how much we'll see in the next episode, or where it might sort of intertwine with the main Master Chief storyline, but I just don't really care about it. Like you were saying, I even in the last episode, I found myself just wandering off, like trying to stay engaged with it, but just not really caring. Like, you know, although her aunt getting like just
Yeah.
sliced, through the gizzard, and then like her like trying to like shake her, and like Soren's just looking at her like she dead. Like let's go. Like you know,
Very cliche moment. She's
yeah,
dead, Quan.
yeah, just like, oh, let's dip out of here. Like, it, I I want to say for Soren, because he is a real character that they got from the lore. He
Yep,
did defect. The ship did crash. He went MIA. So the fact that they're creating this original storyline with him, who he just looks like Dave Chappelle.
he does.
I keep expecting to hear
I
Dave's voice, but I
I
don't.
can't not see it.
Yeah, and I think for the sake of again him being an interesting character that they could potentially do a lot with, I think that's I guess to be seen.
Yeah,
Uh, but I just don't care about the whole insurgency stuff like that. Cool, you addressed it. It did happen in some of the early lore. That's where the Spartan programs were initiated. Blah 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 blah. Cool. Let's focus on the Master Chief and the Covenant and the Ring and the Keystones. Like that's where the real importance is. That's where all of my attention is going towards because that's the stuff I really care about and want to see what they do
yeah.
in this first and second season.
And I'll give them somewhat of a benefit of the doubt because this happens in a lot of shows, especially in an
Yes.
early season where they have a lot of they kind of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of my favorite shows, they have a lot of these like subplots that just disappear in season 2 because they realize like it's not really working out. The audience isn't connecting with it the way that we thought they would, and so they kind of slowly write it out. And you could see that happening in season 2. It's already been renewed.
Yep.
Uh, so I like to give them a little bit of leeway because they're still trying to figure this out in season 1. I mean, I can't tell you how many shows where I'm like, this show is amazing if you can get through season 1.
Right.
And it's very rare to see a show that like really hits it out of the park in season 1. So this could be one of those things where it's like they're trying something new. It may not work out, but as long as they can adapt and learn from it and, maybe spin those plot lines together or something like that, then, maybe it'll work.
Yeah, I think even in the case of a movie, like I was talking with my buddy about this in reference the Mortal Kombat movie that came out a year ago, and I really enjoyed that movie. It obviously comes from a game, a video game that's been around since the '90s, right? So a little even longer than Halo, and they wanted to create a new character. They created this character Cole, which they wanted us to care about, which in some cases I'm like, nah, just show us, like Liu Kang and Scorpion and Raiden, and
Right.
some of these other, characters that show up in the other games. But it's like the new story elements that they tried to create in that movie were again the weakest parts.
Yeah.
And I think that tends to be the case with a already solid or solidified story that exists. Just same thing with like Halo. So, um, I mean, I think when that show comes out with The Last of Us, in
Mm.
HBO, I haven't played the
I'm
game.
so hyped. You haven't played the game? Oh
No,
my
I've
gosh.
not. So I think that could be. I think that's a good stance for us. Like, you can shed your light
Yeah,
about
yeah. I
the
like it's
game.
my favorite game of all time. I
Yeah,
love
I've heard
Halo,
nothing
love
but
it, but
yeah,
Last of Us is my favorite game of all time.
I've heard nothing but great things. Like, if I do have the chance to ever play it, I probably will. Um, and because I didn't have a PS4
Yeah,
at that point, but again, I think we'll see what happens with that show when they start to create their original story elements. But as far as the other parts of Halo, that they're still trying to follow close enough. Obviously, tend to lie within the Master Chief side of things with Dr. Halsey,
yep,
Cortana, and the other Spartans. So I think through this episode 4, um, a couple interesting parts that kind of had me scratching my head, like what's going to happen, sort of thing. Mainly with Master Chief taking out the spinal implant that
yep.
Cortana helped him dig out, which I thought was interesting. Like she had to help him dig it out, but then the um, Brienne of Tarth
Yeah.
Spartan with red hair or
Was
gun
that
like
like
red.
blood hair? What was that?
So to what it looked like to me, she was greasing up her. This is my rifle. There are many
Okay,
like it,
got it,
but this one is
got it,
mine. I thought it
got
was
it,
like
okay,
rifle grease or something.
okay, got it. It looked like
And
blood to me. I was like, from the like, the wound, I
or
was
like
like, "What the
lube.
fuck is
Maybe
happening?"
yeah, maybe it was some sort of like lubricant. I don't know.
Got it, okay.
And then she was like, What what does this look like? Oh, it's now my hair is no longer blonde. It is like red. And like she wanted to be like punk rock or something.
I think it's
Um,
interesting. Like, it's all about, like, teenage rebellion, kind of, which I think is cool. Like, it's an interesting
the
concept.
rebellion she didn't get to have because she
Yeah.
was programmed as a Spartan
Yeah,
during her
exactly, and
teenage years.
I find all that super interesting. All the stuff with John and the Spartans where they're essentially, trained from birth to not be human, and they're
Yeah.
kind of letting their human side out. I think that's interesting. I thought those were kind of the interesting parts of the games, at least lore-wise, is that it's this, like, morality tale of what's right versus what's needed. And Halsey is like the exact personification of that. But I think
Yeah.
this is kind of cool. Like that, I loved that scene. I think it was in the second or third episode where John kind of walked through the city after he took out the chip, and he's experiencing everything kind of for the first time emotionally. He like sees the dog and everything. It's a good little fish out of water scene, and it
Yeah.
makes me care about him a little bit more. And
Yeah.
I think that stuff is interesting. I know it's so different from the games, and
Yeah.
people are gonna complain about all that, and that's fine. I get it. Like, you want to see your badass Master Chief, but I think this is kind of the backstory that we didn't get in the games.
Yeah. And I know over the last couple of weeks, a part of me looks at it from the biased side
Yeah,
of the games, and I'm like, this is sacrilege. There's blasphemy all over the place. I'm like, what the f are they doing? Like, I just can't get behind these choices that they're making. And then, the unbiased part of me is like, okay, let me try and dissect this, you know, uh, and give it its critique that they want or they deserve. So I'm looking at the story that they're presenting us with for this origin story. It's sort of like, in Marvel comics, we have the 616 universe that is like the OG universe. And then we've got the other multiverses out there and other things that happen in those multiverses, like who's who and who's what. Okay, if this is another universe, let's see what they do with it. And granted, again, I totally don't agree with some of the things that they're doing, but
that's
for the
fair.
but for the sake of their choices, seeing how I guess it's sort of like posing like the what if, kind of like they recently did with Marvel, like, well, what
Yeah,
if so and so had the suit or didn't have the stones and all that crap. Like, it kind of this is what this show feels like. It's like a big what if.
yeah,
What
it's like
if
a
Master
Halo
Chief
spinoff
felt,
almost. Yeah,
yeah, like what if Master Chief, took out his inhibitor from his spine and then
and the
started to,
inhibitor that's a show thing, right? It's not
yeah, it's
in
a
the
show
lore.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind of the same thing where like Cortana doesn't get drilled into his
Yeah,
head,
it's just like a
which,
little thing in his helmet.
yeah.
Yeah,
And that's how he's able to like take her out and like,
right,
inject her into like the terminal on Halo.
right.
Um, uh, and I think for the sake of, again, some of those differences, one of the things that I do like about this show is when Cortana speaks and it's from the perspective of her talking to John, where it's almost like I have my headphones on, I'm playing the game, and I can hear just like that.
Yeah, sounds exactly, I mean, it's the same voice, so
Yeah, and I think that is one of the best things
yeah,
about it.
Jen
Again,
Taylor is great.
yeah, having Jen Taylor was probably one of the best choices that they
Yeah,
made in
I
this
mean, she
show.
is the big like, if you look at the games, she's the person you hear the most,
Yep.
and she actually wasn't supposed to be the voice at first, right? They had recasted it,
It
that's a
was
lucky
supposed to
coincidence.
be it was supposed to be the same actress
As Halsey.
as Halsey.
Okay.
And then she couldn't make it or something like that because of COVID. And then they're like, well, we can get Jen Taylor to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm like, why wasn't that the
Yeah.
idea to start?
Yeah, and I feel like that's one of those things where it's working now, but in the beginning, they should have, considered having, like, you can't go full different. Like,
Exactly.
you can change it, but you have to give something of a consistency, right? And so this kind of is that, right? Like, the voice is the immediate, like, okay, like, I can place myself in this Halo world now because I hear Jen Taylor is Cortana. All is right in the world, even if the
Yeah.
story is different. Uh,
Right.
so I'm kind of, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm surprised that they didn't like consider that, because it seems like besides that they've really tried to like forge their own path.
Yeah.
And I can acknowledge the critiques and complaints about that, but at the same time, it's like at least it's interesting. Like
Yeah.
I'm interested in, and I don't know what's going to happen. And that's maybe the best thing I can say about the show is
That's
that
for sure.
if you
Yeah.
just followed the plot, it'd be like, oh yeah, this is coming. This is coming. Like I've played those campaigns 25 million times. So like it wouldn't be surprising. It would be just like watching myself play the game. So at least it's interesting enough. I think that we talked about The Last of Us, and that's maybe a little bit different because the the game itself is very story based,
Right.
and like it's meant there's so many cutscenes in that game that it's almost like playing a movie, and so they're just kind of adapting that. Whereas this is much more of like a Halo, at least the first one, is much more of like a lore or like world based game rather than an actual storyline, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, a lot of, I mean, not a lot of, but a couple of the other things surrounding like Cortana, um, in this show, it was sort of like she was designated by Halsey to take John. In the game, they let her as an
Yeah,
AI
she chose.
choose,
Yeah.
and I also think at the same time, like the stretch or the comparison is like she's basically Dr. Halsey,
Yeah.
but Dr. Halsey chose John, and obviously through these episodes, we know that she chose John ever since he was a little kid, and
Yep.
she visited him on his home planet.
Yeah.
So, and that's another sort of mystery that is, I'm kind of curious to see what, I guess, where that'll go.
Yeah, I think that
Um,
was a cool little like reveal for him is realizing that like he's not in the Spartan program out of necessity.
yeah,
He like it wasn't because his parents died and he was an orphan and he was just put there. Like he was chosen and pulled away from his family to be in this, and like basically he's basically a slave. Like
yeah. I mean, I think they all were, cybernetically chosen and I guess enslaved to a degree to, um, carry out the the commands to, initially go
yeah,
against the insurgents, and now obviously to protect humanity. Uh, I think in some cases there's like a lot of interesting things that I've since like gone back and read, from John and from Cortana, and some of the things that may happen even down the road, for John is, as a Spartan and one of the only remaining Spartans, I guess, from the initial Spartan 2 program. Because obviously we know from the video games that they obviously make more Spartans, but
yeah.
um,
And
I,
for the record, I wonder if that's where they're going with Quan. Is maybe she'll be a Spartan eventually, and this is like her Spartan origin story.
it's
And that'd
possible.
at least be a little bit interesting.
Yeah, it definitely is possible. I think the initial idea of having John have his Spartan team, which again, all three of those characters are original lore characters, so they're not like created like new out of the blue sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, although with is it I think was it Kai or Liz
Uh,
that
I don't know
Kai?
their
I don't know.
names.
Brienne of Tarth, because she's now feeling the same feelings that John is. Um, the conversation she has with Miranda Keys, about learning the Sengeli dialect, and filling in those words, and creating this, solving this sort of puzzle from the audio clips that they've recorded over time, to feeling human. Like she was saying, like, you kind of seem weird. I was like, weird how? Like, I don't know, just human.
Yeah.
And she kind of has like this puzzled look on her face, like, I don't know what that means. And it's like, yeah, because you've never actually been able to live as a human being, because you've been this cybernetic, I'm a Cyberdyne killing machine, so sort of like Terminator,
Yeah.
under the the guise or under the control of the UNSC essentially, but still following orders from what Master Chief says. Which is interesting because I know what happens in episode 5 per the spoil or no, not spoil, but the preview,
Right.
which we'll talk about maybe later at the very end. But I like seeing other Spartans. I like that we're seeing a team at least. I know it's not blue team, but again, I think they all have their roles. I think they're embodying the idea of Spartans just being badass. And I will say in the next episode, we will see some firefight. It was a firefight. Good old Boondocks. But yeah,
Maybe you'll see
that's
grunts.
yeah. Listen, so I like the fact that she makes the comment like about the
Yeah.
grunts.
Yeah.
We haven't seen
They're
grunts. We have
100% bringing them in.
got you.
Yeah.
Uh,
I like that they're kind of teasing it in.
yeah,
And I've heard Brutes might show up too. I guess like Pablo Schreiber was talking about he was in an interview and he said something about like the elites are, an elite walks by, a brute walks by. And it's like, oh, maybe he wasn't supposed to say that.
whoopsie daisy. Yeah, I wonder if we'll see brutes this season.
I would think so. Maybe at the end.
Yeah, I was either thinking at the end or maybe in season 2. And again, that really depends on how far they go along with any sort of story. Like I was surprised that we didn't even see High Charity
Yeah.
in the first season, but we got to see the leg of a hunter and then the actual like moving like worms that the hunter like
Yep.
that makes up the hunter.
Yep.
Which that's what McKee was like had with her in that one like attack scene on the
Right.
ship.
Yeah, and I think that maybe we can talk about that plot line, which I mean, we talked about this in the first episode review where it's like, why would a covenant raise her, right?
Right.
And then we found out in the third episode or something, and it's like, they're on their religious, path for the sacred ring and artifact and whatever, and their little tracker said that like this person's important. And so that to me makes sense. Like they put their religious beliefs in tracking this ring over their hatred of humanity, which is a total covenant thing to do. Like that's their number one priority. So I think I'm cool with that. Like I'm okay with them taking that story choice. And maybe that plot line ends up interesting. I will say like the show lets itself down with poor not necessarily writing, but like poor choices in good story moments. For example, like the scene where she is like stranded on that ship and it goes and attacks the UNSC. Everybody decides to act with stupidity throughout that entire sequence. I think the sequence idea itself totally works for me. Like maybe they went onto the ship and they get attacked there, and then maybe she commandeers their little escape pod and comes back, something like that. Which makes way more sense than just, oh yeah, we'll let you on the ship, no problem, and we won't scan for any other life forms at all.
Yeah,
like clearly the hunters would be on the ship.
yeah,
And then like when they start attacking, they just like ignore her completely, and like she's totally right in the middle. Like just shoot her. Like
yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
Kill her there, and then potential problem solved. I don't know. Like
it's stuff like that where it's like plot armor that really like takes you out of the story. If they made it a very like you can have plot armor if it logically makes sense. Like if she was sitting there and like maybe it appeared in front of her and blocked everything, something like that. Like that would make sense. It wouldn't have you staring at the screen going like, well, this is stupid.
Yeah, because I think in some cases, if you're a soldier looking at the hunter, attacking everything, and then she's just walking in the middle of it, unfazed by what's going on.
Right. You're like, maybe I should shoot that one.
Yeah, like maybe she's controlling it, or she's not friendly. She's an enemy, hostile. Or it's like maybe not kill her either, even just wound her,
Yeah.
see what happens after that point. Maybe she's alarmed by getting shot, and then it's like, oh, the plan is foiled, and then she tries to retreat. She can't. But it could have gone a couple different ways that again wouldn't have been so plot armory and
Yeah.
um
And like the first episode had the same stuff where it's like
yep.
the humans can't shoot the elites with the turret, but Master Chief picks it up and suddenly they can like stuff like that just logically doesn't make sense. It takes you out of the show completely no matter what's going on in it. And the show does a bad job of that where it's like I'm into the plot lines that they're trying to tell, and then
Yeah.
they'll stick some like really stupid moment that just takes you completely out of it. And
Yep.
I yeah, it's tough. And stuff like that makes it feel kind of amateur. Uh,
Yes.
like that's maybe my biggest complaint about the series as a whole so far is that it feels like they don't really know what they're doing. And like there's some interesting ideas in there and I'm interested in where they're taking it, but from a like production perspective, it feels a little amateur and like half baked.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. And I I think there's a lot of evidence behind that as we've been kind of pointing out. And I don't know if it's the reason because they didn't really think about following the story closely enough. Because talking with another friend of mine about other examples where movies or shows have followed an IP that came before this point, like Lord of the Rings and then The Hobbit. They Peter Jackson followed this story from the books close enough, but
Yeah,
like the Lord of the Rings trilogy was followed a lot closer than the Hobbit series.
right.
Um, and so a lot was created differently with the Hobbit. But again, you're talking about it not being amateur, it being very professional. Like
Yeah,
he's already familiar with it. Like the hell, him, Fran Walsh, like they're all familiar with like creating a story on top of a story that's already there that like makes it all like contingent upon one another. We don't really get that in Halo, which is unfortunate because again, like we've been talking, like there's a story here and it could be a lot better than it is, but it's like in some cases it doesn't feel like they know where to go with it and like how it all sort of ties in at one point. Like
yeah, and granted, this could be very well like mid season one lull before it finally rounds into form, and that
sure,
happens in a bunch of shows
sure,
where it's like it's really starting to lose you, and then towards the end of season one, it finally pulls itself together.
right.
Uh, but yeah, it feels I mean, I don't know who the showrunner is. I can probably look it up.
I think it was okay, what's his name? I think is it Stephen Stephen
Stephen
Kane?
Kane and Kyle Kellen. Um,
Because
let's.
he's not the showrunner for season two,
Oh,
although he's
interesting.
like staying on for like consultancy,
Okay.
which who knows? I forgot who was taking over for season two as a showrunner.
So, I mean, it looks like so he did The Last Ship before this, which I guess has decent reviews. I've never heard of it, honestly.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't know who the other one is. But it doesn't feel like a show like a very experienced TV show team.
yeah,
And
yeah.
to some extent, what are you gonna do, right? Uh, the most experienced TV show writers are not going to take on the Halo series that's been in development hell for 15 years. They're just not.
Although I
Uh,
would have liked to have seen
Neil
Neil
Blomkamp,
Blomkamp. Oh,
yeah,
God.
yeah. I mean, of course, but it never got off the ground, and
Yeah, which I don't know, and I don't know if they just never really talked about it or what really happened as to why he he didn't go through with it or was maybe turned off by it or what. Like was he reapproached when the idea was like, hey, this thing is a go, who do we get? Or
right,
maybe they just couldn't get Neil because it like he's just too big, or I don't know. I think though he would have been my choice at that point. And again, I don't know if he would have wanted to do a TV series rather than like a movie or a set of movies.
yeah,
Um, but I think again, he probably would have done a a damn good job. I mean, District 9 is definitely one of my favorite
Yeah,
sci-fi,
it's great.
movies. But for some of the things that they're showing and that they're doing originally in this show, around John and him looking into his past, and like talking to his younger self through like, Cortana's, HUD projection with his helmet on, which was the thing I was joking about. I'm like, oh, nice. Chief's putting on his helmet. 5 seconds
He
later,
takes it
takes it
off
off, and I'm like, son of a bitch. Like, come
again.
on, leave it on, John. Um,
So
uh,
what's interesting to me is like it actually in this show, he's without his helmet more than he's with his helmet. And
yeah,
I think this actually sets up kind of a cool opportunity where in those action scenes, he puts on the helmet. When he puts on the helmet, it's like he means business. And I think it's something I didn't think about until like I've actually started watching this show. Is like when he puts his helmet on, I'm excited.
yeah.
Whereas like you expected the opposite, right? Where it's like it finally takes his helmet off, and like maybe that's the exciting moment. But they kind of flipped it, where it's like, no, just take his helmet off now. Now every
I
time he puts it on, then shit's about to go down. I'm like, okay,
That could be a good way to actually, of depicting the badass part of the Master Chief
right,
that we want
right.
to see. Like, okay, when he puts it on, when he puts his helmet on, like we will most
You're like,
likely see
oh
in this
shit,
next episode, like, oh shit, like
yeah,
Chief means business. He's about to
yeah,
go, like, like destroy all the Covenant, right? And we hopefully see some like not cheesy fight scenes, but which we probably will.
yeah,
But at the same time, like at least he's going to be the chief that we want to see, and then when he takes it off, he's just gonna be like, I don't know, I just had this weird vision, and I don't know what it means, and but yeah, I think that makes sense from their writing perspective.
yeah,
It's definitely obviously different than having this mysteriousness of Chief always, existing, and then like, he doesn't say much, or he does, or when he does, it's like, you know, I don't know, kind of uh like it's like a momentous occasion,
right,
like permission. Like there's, I think it's in
right.
Halo 3 when he's like, um, uh, he jumps from like the ship right onto the. I lost you there, video
Yeah,
wise.
lost my video.
Shayna's gone dark, everyone. Like he's like, permission to board, sir, and he's like, what are you doing? It's like, or permission to continue the fight, and he just like, sends the nuke to the Covenant ship or whatever through
Halo
space.
2.
Yeah, I was in Halo 2. That's right.
Yeah.
So like I think I wonder what sort of dialogue we may get from Chief that's from the games. Like I like the dialogue that they included when Cortana first appears in the first time, and when she says, when the game is over, the king and the pawn go into the same box. Like she literally said that, um uh uh in the Fall of Reach book. So I like the fact that they did those sorts of things. And speaking of Cortana, I'll we go back to the um, uh, background of that we have, where uh, obviously you can't really see because our cameras are in the way. But um, the idea of having this new rendered version of Cortana compared to the game version, like I'm obviously I'd like to see the more roboticness of her, like kind of like where we see around like her neck, on Shane's side, where you can see like the cybernetic portions of it, like it's like this motherboard, this in the circuitry from it. I kind of like that, and part of me misses it, but at the same time, the way they've rendered her now is obviously like more human. It's like a way to, I don't know, maybe make Master Chief feel like he's talking to someone, or looks at someone that's not like a complete robot
Right.
or whatnot. Although he never complained in the games because he was just like, whatever, like, and then just takes it out. But
Yeah,
um,
it's whatever. It looks a little bit uncanny valley, but whatever. Also, I'm back. My
yes,
camera's
He has returned. Yeah, like again,
I'm
minor
finishing this
details.
fight.
Yeah, he finishes the fight, sir.
Just end the video here. That's it's all downhill.
Yeah, so what do you think is going to happen in the last half of the season?
Something that gets us to the Fall of Reach, and then we get to the Halo. And I think that's ultimately where they wanted to go with it.
Yeah,
It almost feels like season 1 is like the prologue to what we saw in the games, where it's like we're gonna kind of ignore the Fall of Reach book, right? And not ignore because they take some things
they
from
did
it.
pick some stuff from it. Yeah,
But I think ultimately they wanted to round out the characters before they got to the events of the first Halo. I don't think there is any in well. Let me say it this way. I was going to say there's no doubt in my mind, but if it were me writing the show, uh, you kind of treat it like a series of introductions to things that you loved.
yeah,
The Force Awakens does this phenomenally in Star Wars, where you introduce the Millennium Falcon, you introduce Han Solo, you introduce Leia, like all these things that you're familiar with, but it wraps this whole original story into it before introducing it. And so, if it were me, the second you see that Halo, that music's gonna play because they haven't really played it much. Like that's
sadly,
like you as a showrunner, I would be like, do not play that music until you see the Halo. Don't do it. Don't do it at all. That's gonna be an earned moment. And hopefully that's the case. Hopefully that's kind of what they're doing is like they're building up to these moments where it's like this is what the fans want to see, but we wanted to kind of flesh it out more before we got there.
yeah,
And I can
like
appreciate that. Like they're trying to flesh it out more. They're trying this original story. They're trying, give John a little bit more humanity to him before we get to the stuff that the fans really, really want to see. And I hope that's where they're going with it. It very well could be that they're not. I can definitely acknowledge that, like, it could be that they really just don't know what they're doing,
maybe the
which is
case,
possible.
unfortunately.
But I think like the fact that it is renewed for season 2, we're only kind of halfway through this season. It seems like things are kind of starting to pick up, at least from
Right.
the preview of the next one.
Yeah.
I could see it turning into what the fans are expecting. They knew that they had 9 episodes, so they want to utilize all that time.
Yeah. I will be disappointed if we don't get the Halo theme when we first see
We have
Halo.
to, right? We just
Like,
have to.
if they don't, then we know for sure they have no freaking clue what
So
they're doing.
I read something that it's Marty O'Donnell is like suing them currently or something. So
Really?
that could be contributing to why they're not using it.
You go against Marty O'Donnell?
Well,
Damn.
apparently,
Woof.
like Marty O'Donnell also like screwed over, or maybe Bungie screwed him over. He screwed them over, something like that. There was some
Yeah.
dispute for Destiny as well.
Yes,
So
there was.
maybe Marty O'Donnell is just a shit. I don't know.
I
You heard
mean,
it here first.
I think one of the cool things about I mean, like obviously the invention, the creation of the iconic Halo theme, um, has evolved over, you know, 6 generation of games. And one of the things I liked and I really enjoyed when the Halo 2 anniversary came out, and if you're playing like you can on the Master Chief
Yeah.
Collection, you could switch back and forth
You get, like,
between
the upgraded audio and
which
yeah,
who did the if you the who did the Halo theme for Halo 2 anniversary?
I don't.
Steve Vai,
Okay, nice.
who is one of the best guitarists
Yeah,
ever. And you just hear it, and I'm like, again, they could potentially get like something like from Steve Vai, which I'm sure they probably didn't. But again, like you're thinking about these things when you're planning it out to want to have these iconic moments. And I think like when those things could potentially happen, as viewers, we watch it and go, oh, they thought this through.
yeah.
But if it doesn't come to that point, then we're gonna watch it and go, they didn't think this through.
Yeah.
And they have no idea what they're actually doing.
Yeah, and I hate to write stuff off so early because,
Sure.
like, we've got time. There's plenty of show
Yeah.
like, you ever watch Parks and Rec? Season 1
Yeah,
is fucking terrible.
it's bad. Yeah,
It's awful. And
yeah,
then, like, it finally rounds into four. Clone Wars kinda the same way. First 2
yep,
seasons are very bad.
yep,
There's so many shows, even The Leftovers, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. The first season is, while it's still solid, it's by far the worst of the 3. Like, 2 and 3 are absolutely phenomenal, and 1 is just okay. And so, like, there's plenty of shows like this where it's like
sure.
they're just trying to figure out kind of what they can do, what works, what doesn't work, especially kind of inexperienced showrunners. So, I don't want to shit on it too hard. I know a lot of people, and this is just a problem with fandom in general now, is people see something different and they immediately hate it before really giving it a chance. And so I'm willing to give this a
Mm,
chance. And I think, like, there's plenty of issues with this show, like, by far.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
the Quan storyline's not working. There's a lot
yeah,
of amateur stuff in here. There's some really cheesy bits and really, like, just dumb moments that are really taking me out of the show. But at the same time, I think there is an interesting show in here. We talked about this before we got on air, but Foundation is a show that I like to kind of compare this to,
yeah,
which is on Apple TV. And it's like one plot line is terrible and one plot line is kind of interesting.
yep.
Uh, and maybe season 2 they kind of fix that. Uh, but like, there's a good show in there. I just don't know if it'll turn into one.
Yeah, and for those of you watching, if you want to watch our videos from Foundation, you can go back and watch those.
Yeah.
Um,
It's us
and
shitting on one plot line and loving the other one
yeah, yeah, same thing.
every week.
But the thing we even said about that show was the story that they got from the book is a story that we shit on.
Yeah,
And
it's the
then it's the
opposite,
complete
right?
opposite. And then the story that they're doing with Empire and and like Brother Dust Dawn and Day, like
Yeah.
that stuff is great.
Yep.
We love that stuff. Higher ratings on that, and it's like, well, it's the complete opposite in this. Like this
Right.
original storyline with Halo is doo doo, and then the stuff that they're potentially following along with the book is like, yeah, there's a story here. Like
Yeah.
it could get better. It could
Yeah.
build and something you know original, and while yet somewhat familiar.
It's like Game of Thrones. Once they ran out of material, it all went to shit.
Yeah, I mean that's the good thing about saying something like Halo, where they can't run out of
Yeah.
stuff.
No, I mean,
Like
343 is still making them, so
yeah, so I mean there's a lot they could do, and I again because not even to get into some of the other books because some of the books are like more so spin-offs, but like we haven't seen the brutes yet. A lot of the brute storylines could come into play and have more focus. Uh, we haven't even seen the flood.
nope.
I don't know if we'll see the flood at all. This time around in this season. Like, I'd almost want them to save the flood for
Yeah.
season 2.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, I remember playing Halo Combat Evolved
Yeah,
and
that hard
getting
pivot
getting to that
halfway through the
stage
game.
343 Guilty Spark that
Yep.
stage, and hearing that flood music again would be so iconic to hear
Yeah.
because it's so creepy even to
Yeah.
this day. Like, I would love to see that. Like, we haven't seen Sergeant Johnson yet. Like,
Yep.
love Sergeant Johnson is definitely one of my favorite characters
I
throughout the
saw
entire
something on
campaign.
Reddit that said they should cast the guy who played Dokes from Dexter as Sergeant Johnson. I was like,
Yes.
"Please do that."
Yes, because he's a bit older now, and Johnson was a bit older. Holy
Yeah.
shit, that would be amazing.
Surprise, motherfucker.
Just yeah, have him grow up mustache and like like a light like light beard. Like he'd have some gray in his character.
Dude.
Marines, shit the fuck up. What I'm saying, like just
Oh, that'd be incredible. I would love to
uh,
see that.
that would be actually really 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 cool to see because I think as long as he's got like a good stature still, like he could totally wear an army suit
Oh, yeah.
with a
No,
cap
he'd be
on
great.
and a cigar and a shotty in his hand and look just complete badass. But it's kind of again like the characters that they could really use, even if they're doing something original with, but that us fans would really appreciate. Like same thing I talked about it off before we recorded was Captain Keys. Like he had an important role
In
in
the
the Fall of
first
Reach
Halo,
and in the
yeah.
first game. where we really haven't gotten like it's like respect hasn't been paid due to him,
Right.
because of the stature that he's at. You're just like, oh, he's just a top dog, like that's that. It's like, well, he's actually a badass, captain in the Pillar of Autumn in his ship, because he like took on 3 Covenant cruisers at one time, and won this victory, and because of his efforts, he was rewarded. There's not a lot about him that he's like, okay, well, we know Miranda's his daughter, and then like, uh, obviously Miranda is also Dr. Holly's
Yeah, I
daughter,
feel like a
so
bad fan because I had no idea that was the case.
I
Yeah, like
forgot about it. I'm like, wait, is
yeah.
that was that real? Oh shit, that's right, it is.
Yeah, I Googled it and I was like, "Oh, well, I'm just an idiot."
Yeah, but like even with Miranda, like she's she doesn't really come into any sort of importance until
Until Halo
Halo
3,
2.
really.
Yeah, I
I mean,
guess
she's
like
in 2, but 3 is, like, I think where she
well,
actually does something.
she's really grown into her position.
Yeah.
So, um, again, seeing her being young and trying to like head this whole division at this
Yeah,
point,
that's a little weird.
I'm like,
That's,
okay,
like,
well,
nepotism,
yeah. I'm
right?
like, you're in
Which
charge of
it
this
is in the game, but, like,
Forerunner fragment,
you're, like,
and
12
then
years old.
yeah, I'm like, how old is she? They didn't. I don't think they've said, but like, it
It's,
seems
like,
like
the
she's
most
in high school.
important thing
Hey, here's
that
this
they've
really,
discovered, and they're just
yeah.
throwing it on this girl who has apparently never done anything. Like, she's, I guess, a scientist. Is she a scientist in the games?
Um, I
It just
don't
feels like
think
that would be
so.
like the job of like the top dog to analyze. I like why isn't Halsey analyzing that? I guess she's off with John, but I don't know. It feels weird, like a weird like the only thing that we see from her in the games is when she's like a fully fleshed out, Marine, or I forget what her title is, but captain, something like that.
So,
Uh
uh, per um, per the Halopedia source, she's a commanding officer.
okay.
And
It just
she,
feels like maybe she's not there yet in this show, and maybe she is, but they're putting her in charge of things that are like way above her pay grade. It's very weird.
yeah, in the year 2552, which is they've addressed in this show, by this point in time, Miranda would be 27 years old.
Okay.
Uh, I
It
don't
seems like she's like 20,
she
like fresh
Yeah,
out of college kinda.
she looks like she's probably, yeah, like early 20s, like 18, 19, 20, 21, sort of thing. Like, obviously she's not a commanding officer. Um, so, I guess there's almost making it seem like she's following in her mother's footsteps
Yeah.
in this, scientific way. Because she's obviously not following in the footsteps of her father, at least not yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see where she goes, or they go with her storyline, and
Yeah.
especially like some of the conversations that she's having with the other
Brienne of Tarth.
Spartans. Yeah, Brienne of Tarth.
I'm like
Which
Michael Scott. It's like, Brienne of Tarth, Dave Chappelle.
yes. And
I
then
don't know
yeah,
their
and then
names.
we also got Vishnu, who's the dude from
Dark Knight
Dark
Rises
Knight
guy.
Rises. He's just naked
Creepy
in a
guy.
pool. Yeah, creepy guy, creepy insurgent guy. Like, just I don't care about it, but I'm like, this is, you're like, there's a lot of booty in this show.
There's a lot of booty in this
Why? I
show.
mean, I get it. Cortana's essentially like cybernetically naked, but like, it ain't like that.
Yeah,
Like,
it's very weird choice to just have them all naked. I mean, it's kind of a sci-fi thing. Like,
yeah,
I
at
don't
least
know.
it's not full. At least, I mean, at least we're not. It's not. We're getting full frontal. Um,
If only. If
I mean, if it
only.
were HBO, yes. If this was an HBO show, then sure. Like, you would see like both John and Brienne, like, in front of the mirror, like while they're like trying to like get the implant out of their back.
Right.
Cortana would just be like full naked at that
Right.
point, like, But um, the other thing I'll say about where they might go, obviously Halo is going to be coming at some point.
Yeah.
I think this next episode, um, because the fragment that John has found gets activated. There's this huge blast wave that essentially sends out this radio signal. And McKee or Mackie, I don't know how they pronounce it in the show. The Covenant human,
Covenant Girl.
Covenant girl, yeah.
That's what I got.
She's like, I know where it is. And it's like, of course you do. I have a theory about her. Like, I don't know if she was like some sort of abandoned Forerunner chick or just I don't know. There's again like
it seems like maybe she was maybe she was trained to be no, she wasn't trained to be a Spartan because
she was almost
we
some
saw
like
her. Yeah, we saw her backstory of like
yeah,
the cheesiest, like, oh, we have to kiss now. And then he dies. See,
yeah,
shit like that. It's like you
yeah.
set up a good story and then you throw some bullshit in there.
There's
Yeah.
definitely more that they haven't. I don't know if we'll see about her backstory. But she knows where it is. They send her to Chief's home planet, Iridium or
Yeah, and
Iridanus, whatever. And there's like the Covenant begin, bombarding. There's a fight. The one interesting part in that scene for the preview, Chief says to Brienne, um, "You're not. You're taking a bench. You're on the bench this time." And she's like, "But why?" And it's like, "Because you're a danger to yourself." And she's like, "Well, what does that make you?" Because she knows that
right.
you also took the chip out.
Yeah.
Which the scene cuts off in the trailer there, but I'm kind of curious to see how
Intrigue.
that sort of relationship goes between Chief and the Spartans. Will she rebel, a little bit more than that? Because again, Halsey doesn't know that she's also removed her implant, much like she was notified when Chief did it, and then Cortana helped her. But
Yeah.
I'm like, so does anyone else not know that that can happen? And just Halsey? Like, I would almost suspect that maybe Miranda would have looked into it by now.
Yeah, it seems too easy. Although, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't
but
want to take a knife to my back, but
well, I mean, then I'm like, probably didn't feel any pain, but it's like, imagine if the other two Spartans did the same thing. Like, oh, you removed your inhibitor. Oh, well, I want to do that too.
yeah,
And then they remove it, and it's like, oh,
it's
I
like
gotta,
iRobot. There's a whole rebellion.
yeah, the Spartan Rebellion, which, I mean, I think that's one of the things about what we've seen in the video games where Chief still rebelled quite a bit. He didn't always follow orders because like he'd be like even he didn't always do things Cortana told him to do. She'd be like, Chief, like we shouldn't do this. And he's like, we're doing it anyway.
Yeah,
Like,
that's like his signature.
yeah, exactly. Like slim chance to live. Cool. We're doing it.
Yeah.
Jumping through space.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I do hope that the next 5 episodes, the second half, gets a lot better, that we see at least the main storyline flesh out a little bit more. And
yeah, I think the thing is missing the most is a ticking clock, like a tension, right?
Yeah,
And
because
they had that opportunity last episode, 2 episodes ago, something like that, where the Covenant chick, like she takes over the thing. Had she just found out, reaches the spot or where to go in that episode, then that elevates all the events that we just saw, where he's on his home planet, and like if you have an impending doom, then everything that happens is escalated, right?
Yep.
Because it means that they have to do it quickly. Like right now, there doesn't seem like any sort of urgency to anything, and maybe we get that in this episode. But we've had a couple episodes where things are happening, but like there's this war with the Covenant that we never see, and like, why is there any urgency to do anything? Like we can just trot around doing whatever because nobody's coming to get us. And I feel like it's missing that, and that's just a basic story element. You need to have some sort of urgency or tension, or else everything's just kind of meaningless.
I agree, and I wonder if this next episode is going to be the kicker for that.
Yeah, it might be.
But with that means there's only 4 episodes left till we would essentially see Reach get glassed.
Yeah, maybe.
And which again, there's potential to see like a really cool effect when that happens. If I had if I had any expectations for this show, it's to see the Halo theme. When we see that and glassing Reach, at
Yeah.
this point. So, and those could be really big moments, I think, for as a fan to go, you know what, like I'll give kudos to you for doing it this way, and
Yeah. I think
you
we
know,
do need a little more reach before that too.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
I agree.
it's your typical, like, you have to develop stuff before you kill it off, right?
Right.
Like you do with any character. Like, if you kill off a character but you don't know anything about them, then it's boring.
Yep.
If you kill off Reach without ever showing Reach, or I mean, I guess we got like 2 scenes there, but, like, what's the importance of Reach? Why is it good? Why is it, you know, the central plot part of the entire UNSC?
Yeah. Like,
If we don't get that, then what's the point? It's like in The Force
right.
Awakens where they blow up that non-Coruscant planet that we have
Yeah.
no idea what it is. Like, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, cool. That plant's gone.
Yeah.
Didn't It wasn't really crucial enough, so it wasn't
Yeah, and you
Coruscant.
can't really
So
rely on, like, people knowing, like, oh, it's Reach because, I played the game, I read the books. Like, you can't rely on that.
right. I think the only real points of this through these 4 episodes is uh that is essentially their base of operations, but the real secret is Earth.
Yeah,
Like, that is the whole thing in the games, is to protect Earth.
yeah,
And if Earth goes, then all humanity is really, really lost.
yeah,
So I don't feel like there's been this, like you were saying, like this importance behind Reach just yet.
yeah. They haven't
Like
really, like,
Reach
why
is
is it
supposed to,
hidden?
yeah, like
Is
Reach is
it
supposed to have a
hidden?
great,
We haven't really explained that
uh
either, right?
no,
Like, I know it is hidden, but they haven't, like, explicitly said, like, oh no, like, except for in that one episode where he's like, I will never tell you where it is.
right.
But why? I mean, we know why, but the show has to explain why.
Right. They haven't said that it has a great interplanetary defense, which still isn't enough for the
Yeah.
entire Covenant forces. Which should say something about the Covenant. Like, they're relentless, and they, again, from the games, seemingly have an endless army at their disposal. Um, which, again, we really haven't felt that yet either. Um, and I think for Reach's sake, we need to feel more about Reach. We need to feel more about why people don't know about it, the location in their minds, like, or it's kept anywhere on any ship log, or why it needs to be protected. And we get some scenes about, like, yeah, it's their base of operations. Yes, this is where Dr. Halsey is, and and all, like, the important people, in essence, right? Like this where the army is, the soldiers, everything, right? But there needs to be more built upon that, because it's like, okay, Reach gets glassed. Did you care about that?
Yeah.
Because in the book, I remember reading that shit, and I was like, that's insane that
Yeah.
this just happened. Like, and then thus Halo Combat Evolved, kicks off, um, from slip space and whatnot. But yeah, I really want to feel more about the planet. And so I hope within these next 5 episodes, we see more, we feel more about Reach. And again, like, the fact that Earth hasn't been mentioned yet either, is another big thing, which
Yeah.
maybe they save that for season 2. I don't know, but or I don't know, 3, if it gets to that point. We'll see if it
Yeah.
doesn't get canceled by then. But
It's that delicate balancing act between you gotta throw out enough so that you don't get canceled, but
I
you
don't.
can't throw out too much, and then you have nowhere to go.
Did they? I forget. Which I don't care. I don't know if they've finished filming season 2.
I don't think they've even started filming. I couldn't. They could
Maybe not
be. I'm
yet.
not sure.
So my question is this for the new showrunner to take on season 2 is, knowing how season 1 has gone thus far, the feedback, the pros and cons, the criticism, all that malarkey. Will the showrunner for season 2 do something different and actually cater more towards going, like, I like what you did. I'm gonna follow a little bit more towards the
Yeah,
actual,
and that's the thing.
storyline.
Like, you use season 1 to experiment a lot of the time. Uh, it's rare stuff gets canceled after one season. Usually, like, unless it's just awful.
like Cowboy Bebop on
Stuff gets
Netflix.
yeah, stuff gets like a second season.
Ugh,
I mean, like, granted, like in the past, it was different because network
sure.
TV, you get your viewers, but now it's like, I mean, you've seen like all the Apple shows, they almost always get a season two,
Yep.
uh, because sometimes it takes a while, right? And
Yeah.
like this is being streamed pretty often. I think Pablo Schreiber said it was one of the top streamed shows out there.
It's
Like
been
a
getting a lot
lot
of
of people
attention,
are
a lot of
watching it.
views. Yeah.
So I mean, they have a vested interest, and 343 definitely does in making this successful, and Microsoft does really.
Yeah.
Like so,
They can allot the money to it, you know.
yeah, and I think like I hope that they are listening to the feedback. You don't want to do exactly what the fans tell you to do, but you want to kind of course correct. You
Yeah.
can definitely take your audience into account.
Sure.
You want to tell your own story, but you also want to see like a lot of the times when you're writing stuff, you think it's great, and then you show it to somebody else, and like, ah, no, this is not great, and maybe you don't know that, right? You know, maybe everybody internally thought this Quan storyline was really going somewhere, and this is really interesting. Show it to an audience, they don't like it, and that's okay. Like, just learn from that, push it forward. In season two, make some changes, and we can only
Yeah.
hope that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. I think course correction is a good word to use. And I think that's something they could do for, you know, season two. That's again yet to be determined, as we'll see how that all plays
Yeah,
out.
I
But
mean, it could course correct in season one. I don't
yeah,
know.
the end of the
Maybe it's
episode, yeah,
great.
end of the season. Yeah, like they could just be like, yeah, this is like the original part that we just wanted to change, and then we veered right back into the center line, I guess. I don't know. And
Maybe it's Rogue One, where like the first 2/3 of that movie, I'm like, this is boring, this is not good, I'm not in it. And then Act Three comes, and you're like, whoa, this is the best
very
thing
well could
ever.
be.
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah, I mean that very well like the last 3 episodes of this season could be like the best parts,
Yeah,
right?
could be.
Or last 2, whatever, like, and that's where someone's like, should I watch Halo?" It's like, if you can get through the first 6 or 7 episodes,
Yeah.
you know,
And I can't
uh,
even tell you how many times I have to make that caveat for some of my favorite shows. If you
yeah,
can get through season one, it's good. If you can get through seasons 1 through 3, and like the Clone Wars, then it
yeah,
gets good.
yeah, no, I agree, and, um, I think if they continue to pull in the views, again, like the statistics that they look for mainly to determine whether or not future seasons will be greenlit, then they could go, yeah, we'll make a season 3 because season 1 still got a lot of views. We
Yeah.
still made money off of it. Season 2 made even more because of whatever X, Y, and Z reasons that they did. Prove that those numbers were true,
Yep.
and accurate. And then they go, yeah, we're making season 3, and then again, we could see where the show is, and in lieu
Right.
of other like the games and whatnot. So
Yep.
like and who knows? Like I think it's the one thing that piques my curiosity is like, where will the season end with the original storyline? And then where will season 2 end with the original storyline? Because
Yep.
I think one of the reasons why I also continue watching this, it's not just to shell out, $5 a month to Paramount, but it is because I'm a fan, and because I do care about this IP
Yep.
a lot. I want to see where it goes. And look, while we see where it goes, we make these videos, and we can, give kudos to the things that we like, whether it's original or not, and then we can completely dump on the things that we don't like, that are original or not. So
Right.
it goes both ways, and I mean, it's like you're saying, we've seen it before, and this certainly won't be the last time we see anything like this done with like an original IP.
Right.
So I mean, whether it be Marvel, DC, uh, maybe The Last of Us, who knows? We'll see when that show comes out. But um, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about these
Is
4
anyone still
episodes.
watching? Probably
Yeah,
not.
if you are, listen, kudos to you. Like and subscribe to the channel. Share with your friends and your pets. and your neighbors.
Yeah,
And
those pet views are very important.
yeah, listen, you got that pet account for your dog or your cat, and then you follow other people, and then you're like, oh, I watch this show, and then you just give it a little quick, cat paw, dog paw, pat, thumb up, and and then it helps us out. So we do appreciate it. Yeah, so I guess we're gonna take a few weeks off
Yep.
while we watch and contemplate, and Shannon and I text back and forth about the next 4 or 5 episodes, and then once the finale comes out, we'll do a second half recap, and then see where we are and when going into season 2, and maybe by then we'll know a little bit more about season 2 when it's starting to be filmed, and maybe if there's any details shortly thereafter, before we record, and yeah, I don't. Did they say when the Last of Us show comes out?
I think it's next year.
Okay,
I think 2023, but I'm hyped for that because
because they already
Craig.
started filming for that, right? I
Yeah,
think. Yeah,
yeah. So, and then the showrunners are Neil Druckmann, who wrote and
wrote the
directed the
show. Yeah,
game, and
yep.
then Craig Mazin, who did Chernobyl.
Love Chernobyl. I need to
Yeah,
watch that again.
yeah. I'm hyped because I listened to the Chernobyl podcast, and Craig Mazin did his like behind the scenes, and it seems like
Yeah,
he really knows what he's doing.
yeah, he does.
So I'm excited for that one. I
Yeah,
think it'll be great, and obviously there's top talent across the board there.
that there is another Game of Thrones chick.
Yep,
And the Mando
and the
himself.
Mandalorian.
Yep. So cool. Well, until about 5 weeks from now, we'll chat more about Halo and what we like and what we don't like. And till then, thank you all for the support, and I'll see you guys on the next video.